My name is Clara Wallace, and I am 25 now, but the story that truly shaped me began when I was 18. It's a story about the quiet, green streets of Portland, Oregon, the hallowed halls of an East Coast university, and the shattering realization that the people you trust most can wound you the deepest. It is also a story about how, sometimes, a wound can be the very thing that teaches you how to heal yourself, how to stand on your own, and how to build a life far grander than the one you thought was stolen from you. Growing up, our house was a testament to quiet, Pacific Northwest ambition. My father, Richard, was a successful regional manager for a timber company, a man who spoke in confident pronouncements and measured his worth by the respect he commanded. My mother, Eleanor, had been a bookkeeper before my brother and I were born, and she ran our household with the same meticulous attention to detail, her love expressed through perfectly balanced meals and flawlessly ironed school uniforms. I was their firstborn, the daughter who mirrored their disciplined nature. From my earliest memories, I was the one who arranged my books by author, who found a deep satisfaction in a perfectly solved math problem, who saw life as a series of well-defined goals to be achieved through diligence and hard work. My parents nurtured this in me. Clara's got the brains, my father would tell his golf partners, his voice thick with pride. She's going to do something important. That something important was always tied to a top-tier education. The promise of it began when I was 7, with a blue portfolio folder labeled Clara's College Fund. Every month, we're putting money in here for you, Mom explained, showing me the first crisp bank statement. The number on the page was small, but the promise it represented was enormous. So that when the time comes, you can go anywhere your heart desires. Yale, Stanford, anywhere. That blue folder became my North Star. It wasn't just about money, it was the physical embodiment of my family's belief in me, a covenant that my hard work would be rewarded. While other kids spent their summers at the lake, I spent mine at science camps or volunteering at the Oregon Health and Science University. I was captain of the debate team, a National Merit Scholar, and the valedictorian of my graduating class. Each achievement was a brick I laid on the path to the future they had promised. Then there was my brother, Leo. 3 years my junior, he was my opposite in every conceivable way. Where I was studious, he was charming. Where I was deliberate, he was impulsive. He drifted through school on a cloud of charisma, his mediocre grades always excused with a wave of my parents' hands. Leo's a people person, Mom would say, ruffling his hair after he'd talked his way out of another detention. He has a different kind of intelligence. He's a born leader. I never resented Leo's personality, but I grew to resent the double standard it created. When he scraped the side of Dad's brand new sedan, it was a learning experience. When I got my first ever B+ in an advanced placement class, it was a cause for a family meeting about my focus. When Leo decided he wanted to be a DJ and my parents bought him a $1,000 set of turntables that he abandoned after 2 months, it was supporting his creative exploration. When I needed a new laptop for my advanced coursework, I was given a budget and told to research the most cost-effective option. They loved me, I was sure of it, but their love for me was conditional on my performance, while their love for Leo was unconditional, full stop. Still, the college fund was my sanctuary. It was the one area where their investment in me seemed absolute. By my senior year, it had grown to over $200,000, a formidable sum that made my dream of attending Yale's renowned biochemistry program a tangible reality. The day my acceptance letter arrived, the house was filled with a rare, uncomplicated joy. My father opened a bottle of expensive Oregon Pinot Noir he'd been saving. My mother cried, her tears ones of pure pride. To our Clara, Dad toasted, his glass held high. The future Dr. Wallace. The summer after graduation passed in a golden haze of anticipation. I spent hours online, connecting with my future roommate, planning my course schedule, and researching the undergraduate labs I hoped to join. The world felt wide with possibility, a perfectly drawn map leading me straight to the life I had worked so hard to earn. I should have noticed the subtle shifts, the quiet anxieties that began to creep into the corners of our home. The hushed conversations between my parents that would cease the moment I entered a room. The way my father would stare into the middle distance, a frown line etched between his brows. The unusual number of late-night meetings he and Leo were having in the study. But I was cocooned in my own bright future, too naive to imagine the ground was about to crumble beneath my feet. The collapse came on a Tuesday, 2 weeks before I was scheduled to fly to New Haven. Dad called a family meeting in the living room. His voice lacked its usual confident timbre. Mom sat on the sofa, her hands twisting a linen napkin in her lap. Leo slouched in an armchair, staring at his phone, a picture of feigned indifference. "Clara, honey," Dad began, pacing in front of the unlit fireplace. "We have to talk to you about something. It's about your college fund." A cold dread trickled down my spine. "What about it?" Mom looked up, her eyes glistening. "There was an investment opportunity," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Your father was trying to grow the fund even more for you." "A sure thing. It was a small biotech firm," Dad elaborated, refusing to meet my gaze. "Their research looked revolutionary. The projections were incredible. We thought we could double your fund in 6 months." The room felt airless. "What happened?" Dad sighed, the sound heavy with manufactured regret. "The company's clinical trials failed. Catastrophically. They declared bankruptcy last week. The stock is worthless. Everything is gone, Clara. The money is gone." The words didn't compute. "All of it?" "The entire $200,000. Mom nodded, a single tear tracing a path down her cheek. "We're so sorry, sweetheart. We were only trying to help." I looked from my father's pained expression to my mother's tears, and then to my brother. Leo was still looking at his phone, but his thumb was frozen over the screen. He wasn't shocked. He wasn't surprised. He knew. That was the first crack in their story. My mind, trained for problem solving, immediately began to triage. "Okay, it's okay. I can take out more loans. I have some scholarships. I can work. I'll make it work." "Clara," Dad said, his voice taking on a firm, parental tone. "You need to be realistic. Yale is out of the question now. We can't afford it, and we can't in good conscience let you take on that kind of debt." I stared at him, incredulous. "But it's Yale. It's been the plan for 10 years. Plans change," he said flatly. "You can go to the University of Oregon. It's a fine school. You can live at home, save money, and transfer later if you still want to." It was as if he'd suggested I amputate a limb. All those years of work, of sacrifice, of believing in their promise, all dismissed in a single sentence. Leo finally spoke, his voice dripping with a casualness that felt like a slap. "It's not the end of the world, Clara. It's just a brand name." "You wouldn't understand," I shot back, the words laced with a bitterness that surprised even me. "You've never had to work for anything." "That's enough," Mom snapped, her grief suddenly replaced by defensiveness. "We're all hurting. There's no need to attack your brother." I retreated into a shell of shocked silence. I spent the next 2 weeks in a frantic daze, trying to salvage my dream. I called Yale's financial aid office, which was sympathetic but unable to conjure a full tuition scholarship out of thin air. I applied for emergency loans. I cobbled together a financial plan that involved 3 part-time jobs, the cheapest meal plan, and a level of frugality that would make a monk look extravagant. My parents watched my desperate efforts with a strange detachment, as if they were observing a problem they had no part in creating. Their sympathy felt hollow, their apologies rehearsed. When they dropped me off at my New Haven dorm, the air was thick with unspoken words. The joyful, tearful milestone I had always imagined was replaced by a tense, perfunctory setup of my extra-long twin bed. They left early, citing the long drive back to the airport. As I watched them go, I felt an overwhelming sense of abandonment. I was alone, adrift in a sea of my family's broken promises, armed with nothing but my own fierce, desperate determination. That first semester at Yale was a blur of exhaustion. My life was a frantic triangle between the lecture hall, the library, and my various jobs stacking books, serving food in the dining hall, and tutoring freshmen in chemistry. While my classmates discussed weekend trips to New York City, I was calculating whether I could afford to buy a new notebook. The shame was a constant, low-grade fever. I felt like an imposter, a scholarship kid who had somehow slipped through the cracks and was now in way over her head. Yet, in the classroom, I thrived. The intellectual challenge was a balm to my wounded spirit. In my advanced biochemistry seminar, I found a mentor in Professor Anya Sharma, a brilliant and intense woman whose work on enzyme kinetics was legendary. She saw past my worn-out sneakers and the perpetual dark circles under my eyes. She saw my mind. "You have a gift, Ms. Wallace," she told me after I presented a particularly complex analysis. "You don't just learn the material, you interrogate it." Her words were a lifeline. I went home for Christmas break feeling fragile but proud. I had survived. I had a 4.0 GPA. I had proven I could make it on my own. I was not prepared for what I would find. The first clue was Dad's car. The practical family sedan had been replaced by a gleaming new Lexus SUV. "A little bonus from work," he said breezily when I asked. At the house, there was a new, enormous smart TV mounted over the fireplace, and Mom was wearing a delicate gold necklace I'd never seen before. For a family that had supposedly suffered a catastrophic financial loss, they seemed to be doing remarkably well. The biggest change, however, was in Leo's bedroom. It had been transformed into a high-tech command center. A massive curved monitor sat on a new designer desk, flanked by professional-grade audio equipment. A whiteboard on the wall was covered in flowcharts and buzzwords: synergy, user acquisition funnel, disrupt. "Leo started a company," Mom explained when she saw me staring. Her voice was filled with a reverence I had never heard her use when speaking of my academic awards. "It's a tech startup. It's called Synergize. It's going to be a new kind of social media platform for creatives and visionaries to collaborate." "Wow," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. "That's a lot of expensive equipment. How is he funding all this?" "Oh, we're helping him get started, of course," she said with a dismissive wave of her hand. "You have to invest in potential, you know." The cold dread from that summer afternoon returned, but this time it was mixed with a sickening suspicion. I needed to know the truth. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I crept to the top of the stairs, my heart pounding in my chest. Their voices drifted up from the living room, low and confidential. "Do you think she suspects anything?" Mom asked. "Why would she?" Dad replied. "As far as she knows, it was a bad investment. A tragedy. Besides, she's so wrapped up in her books, she doesn't see anything else." Then Leo's voice, full of a confidence that turned my blood to ice. "We're launching the beta in February. Once the first round of VC funding comes in, we'll be golden. Then we can pay back her college money and she'll see this was the smart move all along." My breath caught in my throat. "I still feel guilty," Mom murmured. "She's working so hard. Eleanor, we've been over this." Dad's voice was firm, impatient. "An Ivy League degree is a piece of paper. Leo is building an asset. Something real. In 5 years, he could be employing hundreds of people." We made an executive decision. We invested in the venture with the higher potential for return. It's just smart business. I didn't hear any more. I retreated to my room, a silent scream trapped in my lungs. It wasn't a bad investment. It wasn't a tragedy. It was a choice. They had looked at their 2 children, one who had done everything they'd ever asked, and one who had done nothing, and they had chosen to sacrifice my future for his whim. They hadn't lost my college fund. They had stolen it. The betrayal was so profound, so absolute, that it felt like it had rewritten my entire childhood. Every word of praise, every proud smile, every contribution to that blue folder was a lie. I lay awake all night, the rage a living thing inside me. But by morning, the rage had cooled into something else, a cold, hard, diamond-like resolve. I would not confront them. I would not give them the satisfaction of my tears or my anger. I would gather evidence. And then I would build something of my own. Something so successful that it would eclipse their petty betrayal and make them see, with blinding clarity, what a terrible bet they had made. The rest of the break, I was an actress. I feigned interest in Synergize, asking Leo questions about his business model and his target demographic. He was all too eager to boast, revealing the naivete and lack of substance behind his grand vision. When no one was home, I went into my father's study. It took me less than 10 minutes to find the file. Synergize, LLC. Inside were bank statements detailing the systematic transfer of funds from the Clara's College Fund account into a new business account. I took pictures of every single page with my phone. My evidence was secure. Returning to Yale, I was a different person. The grief and shame had been burned away, leaving a core of pure determination. I sought out Professor Sharma. I need a project, I told her, my voice more direct than it had ever been. Something challenging, something with real-world applications. Intrigued, she assigned me to her lead research team, which was developing a novel enzyme-based delivery system for targeted cancer therapies. The work was complex and exhilarating. I spent countless hours in the lab, driven by a new, relentless energy. My mind, free from the fog of my family's drama, saw things with a new clarity. One night, staring at a diagram of our enzyme's molecular structure, I had an epiphany. The same principle we were using to deliver chemotherapy drugs to specific cancer cells, could it be adapted? Could it be used to deliver active ingredients, retinoids, hyaluronic acid, vitamin C, to specific layers of the skin? The cosmetics industry spent billions on ingredients that barely penetrated the epidermis. If we could create a system that delivered them precisely where they needed to go, it would be revolutionary. I took the idea to Professor Sharma. She listened intently, her eyes lighting up with intellectual excitement. "Clara, that's not just a good idea," she said slowly. "That's a brilliant one. The commercial potential is enormous." She connected me with Yale's Office of Cooperative Research, which helped students and faculty patent and commercialize their discoveries. They also introduced me to Ethan, a sharp, ambitious MBA student, and Maya, a gifted PhD candidate in chemical engineering from Professor Sharma's lab. Together, the three of us became the co-founders of Oracell Technologies. We entered Yale's annual Venture Challenge, a competition for student startups with a grand prize of $50,000 in seed funding. We spent weeks perfecting our business plan, building our pitch deck, and running preliminary tests in the lab that confirmed our hypothesis. Our delivery system was 20 times more effective than the leading market competitor. On the day of the competition, as I stood before a panel of venture capitalists and successful entrepreneurs, I wasn't just pitching a company. I was validating my own worth. I channeled all the pain of my parents' betrayal, all my fierce determination, into that presentation. I spoke with a clarity and passion that came from a place deep within me. We won. That night, as Ethan, Maya, and I celebrated, I got a text from Leo. "Heard you won some science fair thing. Cute. Dad just wired me the last $50K from the investment fund. We're going to be millionaires, sis. You should have bet on me." I smiled as I read the text. He had no idea. The $50,000 prize was just the beginning. One of the judges had already scheduled a meeting with us to discuss a 7-figure seed investment from her VC firm. That summer, I didn't go home to Portland. I told my parents I had a research fellowship, which was true in a sense. The three of us rented a small, stuffy lab space in New Haven and worked relentlessly. We finalized our patent, conducted rigorous clinical trials, and began negotiating our first licensing deal with a major luxury skincare brand. By the time my sophomore year began, Oracell Technologies was a real, revenue-generating company. I was no longer working in the dining hall. I had moved into my own apartment, I was the co-founder and chief scientific officer of a company valued at over $3 million. I kept tabs on Synergize through occasional, stilted phone calls with my family. The beta launch had been a disaster. The platform was buggy, the user interface was clumsy, and they had failed to attract any meaningful user base. The venture capital funding Leo had been so sure of never materialized. My college fund was gone, and his dream had evaporated along with it. I decided to go home for Christmas. I was ready. The atmosphere in the house was funereal. The Lexus was gone, replaced by a modest used car. My parents looked older, worn down. Leo was a shadow of his former self, his charismatic bravado replaced by a sullen bitterness. The confrontation happened over dinner. Dad was trying to lecture me about the importance of a fallback plan if my little science project didn't work out. That's when Leo snapped. "Oh, just stop it, Dad," he yelled, throwing his napkin on the table. "Stop pretending you know anything about business. You bankrupted us for my stupid idea. You stole Clara's money and gave it to me, and I failed. Just admit it." My parents froze, their faces a mask of horror as the truth finally spilled out into the open. My mother turned to me, her eyes pleading. "Clara, we were going to tell you." I held up a hand, my voice calm and steady. "It's okay, Mom. I know. I've known for a year." I told them everything. About overhearing their conversation. About finding the bank statements. About the pain and fury of their betrayal. And then I told them about Oracell. I watched their expressions shift from shock to disbelief to a dawning, greedy comprehension as I laid out the numbers, the valuation, the licensing deals, the venture capital funding. "Well," my father said, recovering first, a false heartiness creeping into his voice. "Well, that's my girl. I always knew you had it in you. That business acumen, you get that from me. We need to talk about how I can help you take this to the next level." I let out a soft, humorless laugh. "No," I said, the word as clean and sharp as a scalpel. "You will have nothing to do with my company. You will not advise me, you will not profit from me, and you will not take 1 ounce of credit for my success. My success happened not because of you, but in spite of you." I slid a folder across the table. "What you will do," I continued, "is sign this. It's a legally binding repayment agreement for the $212,450 you took from my college fund, plus interest. You can sell whatever assets you have left. You can get second jobs. I don't care how you do it, but you will pay me back every last cent." "This is blackmail," my father sputtered. "No," I said, looking him straight in the eye. "This is a consequence. It's a boundary. It's me, finally teaching you that your actions have a cost." They signed. There was nothing else they could do. The next morning, before I left for the airport, Leo came to my room. His eyes were red. "I'm sorry, Clara," he whispered. "I was a stupid, arrogant kid. I never should have let them do it." He handed me a check from his personal savings account. It was for $5,000. "It's not much," he said, "but it's a start." It was the first genuine crack in the wall that had stood between us for years. In the years that followed, my life unfolded in ways I could never have predicted. Oracell Technologies was acquired by a global cosmetics giant 3 years later, making me a multimillionaire before I'd even finished my PhD. My parents repaid their debt to me in full, our relationship settling into a polite, formal distance. We saw each other on holidays, the vast canyon of their betrayal always silently between us. Forgiveness, I learned, is not always about reconciliation. Sometimes it's simply about letting go of the hope that the past could be any different. My relationship with Leo, however, slowly began to heal. Humbled by his failure, he went back to school, got a degree in design, and found a quiet satisfaction in a career he built for himself, on his own terms. He was the one person in my family who truly understood the price of my success. Sometimes, when I'm in a board meeting or giving a lecture at a university or signing the checks for the scholarship foundation I established for students from unsupportive families, I think about that blue folder. I think about the girl who believed in its promise, whose world was shattered when that promise was broken. The pain of that betrayal was the most formative experience of my life. It was a fire that burned away my naivete, my desire for their approval, my belief that my worth was something they could bestow or take away. In the ashes, I found something far more valuable: myself. I learned that the only approval that matters is your own. I learned that true security isn't found in a bank account someone else controls, but in the knowledge of your own strength, your own intellect, and your own unbreakable resilience. They tried to take my future, but in doing so, they inadvertently gave me the keys to a kingdom I never would have known how to build on my own. And for that, in the quietest, most private corner of my heart, I am profoundly, surprisingly grateful.